Kathy, I'm trying to figure out how we can move this because I need. Is there a spot there? Okay, maybe I can move John Payne. I need a spot for John Payne. I don't have a spot. It's okay. No, how about next to David? Is there one right there next to David? Yes. Take that one. And then, oh, I did the baby. Yeah, you do.
Here goes nothing. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is time to begin our regular Thursday afternoon meeting of the Rotary Club of Power. I want to welcome each one of you here. Pleasure to be here today. And I would like to ask two things. First of all, this would be a very good time, if you haven't already, to go ahead and put your cell phone on stun instead of kill. So please silence it. And also, folks, one thing that I've noticed is that we have several members that have yet to download and enter the Club Runner app. It's very handy, very easy to use. Makes it a lot easier for us to communicate with each other via telephone call, text, email. So if you haven't downloaded and started to use that yet, I urge you to do so. If you have any problems with that, just give me a call. We'll walk you through. And I would like to thank Dr. Sarah Robbins, our piano player for today. Very nice to meet you. Now I'd like to ask each of you to stand, and I'm going to welcome Dr. David Jones to the microphone for the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem.
Thank you, and appreciate the raise in my degree. I had to call, and my name's not Indiana either, so I'm not a doctor. So no, I'm just plain old David. So let's pledge, shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, sing and you sing by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed as the twilight's last gleam, whose bright lights and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Please remain standing for our invocation.
like to now invite Larry Wickbutt to issue our invocation. By the way, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's bow together in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be here at Rotary today, to enjoy the fellowship of these friends and colleagues, and to think about opportunities, Father, for placing service above self. We thank you for the food that we've enjoyed and the ones that have prepared it and served it. We thank you for all of life's blessings, Father, and ask that you would guide our meeting today, help us to grow in our knowledge of what's going on in our community and in the opportunities we have to be of service to it. And we just ask all of this in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. It's my joyful opportunity to be able to welcome you today. Tyler, we are glad for each and every one of you taking time out of your busy schedule. I think our room is just about packed out today, and that's always great to see. Your smiling face certainly adds to this. And I know we have some guests with us today. Dr. Edwards is standing because he has some he wants to introduce.
I want to introduce for the second time Sean Ozenthal. Stand up, Sean. He and his wife recently moved to Tyler 14 weeks ago, and he's turning in his application to join us.
All right. All right. Thank you, Sean. Have you with us? How about this back there? Any guests? You get the award for the longest and most courageous service if you've been with Bob that long. In the middle? No. All back several times now. You signed up as members, so no visitor there. I think the same thing's true at this table. How about back at the back corner? Any guests back there? And over here to my left?
Our couple guests, Alan Johnson is our returning guest today. He's turned in his application, and if he makes it through the arduous process.
Alan, that's a tough one, right?
And then also with me today, Kyle Childress, who used to actually share an office that are good.
All right.
Producer of
All right, thank you. Thank you guys for being with us today. You know, you visitors can take a look around the room and realize you're pretty faced and make this room improve a little bit. We're glad that you've come, and we look forward to the same program. Yep.
Thank you, Larry. And while I've got well, I've got just a second, I want to thank all those that turned out for the Rose City Air Fest. It was difficult going there for a while, but we got the job done. Give yourself a hand. Yes?
I am so forever grateful for all of you that turned up and worked hard and did all that. I realized there were issues. It was our first time out. It was hugely successful to the public, but we got some issues that will not be there next year. So please forgive us and thank you for everything.
We'll get it ironed out, okay? Again, everybody, nice work. Our greeters for today were Susan Hill and Pamela Walters. Thank you, ladies. Job well done. Now it's time yet again for our favorite part of the meeting. This Week in History with Paul Glasser.
Starting today on the 8th of July, 1957, 17-year-old John Lennon, along with his band, the Quarrymen, played a gig at the Woolton Parish Church Outdoor Fair in Liverpool, England. 15-year-old Paul McCartney, having heard of the Quarrymen, showed up to listen. After the performance, McCartney and a mutual friend of Lennon's and McCartney's followed Lennon to a nearby church auditorium where the Quarrymen were slouching in chairs. McCartney took out the guitar he was carrying and began riffing on Little Richard numbers. His talent on the guitar far exceeded that of Lennon, which Lennon recognized. The The next week, Lennon invited McCartney to join the quarrymen, and 3 years later, the band became known as the
Beatles.
That meeting that day on July the 8th, 1957. On the 9th of July, 1850, Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States, died at age 65 after just 16 months in office. Taylor attended a 4th of July fundraising event at the site of the Washington Monument, then under construction. He consumed a large quantity of cherries and iced milk and began suffering gastrointestinal distress later that day. He succumbed to a high fever 4 days later. The exact cause of death never having been precisely determined. Millard Fillmore was sworn in the next day and would become the last president of the Whig Party. On the 10th of July in 1985, the Coca-Cola Company cried uncle and brought back the original formula under the brand name Coca-Cola Classic. ABC's Peter Jennings broke into General Hospital on the ABC television network to break the news of Coca-Cola's capitulation. It was the culmination of one of the largest consumer goods marketing debacles in history. On the 11th of 1804, in what was at the time called an affair of honor, we now call it a duel, Aaron Burr, Vice President of the United States at the time, shot and killed his political nemesis, Alexander Hamilton. The duel happened in Weehawken, New Jersey, on the exact spot where Hamilton's son, Philip, had died in a duel 3 years earlier, defending his father's honor. Burr was charged with murder, but was immune from prosecution while holding office. He was never tried, but died in thorough disgrace in 1836. On the 12th of July, 1960, the rights having been acquired by the Ohio Art Company from its French inventor, the first Etch-a-Sketch went on sale in the United States. Who had one? Everybody had one. Since the product's introduction, more than 100 million units have been sold. The classic Etch-a-Sketch is still in production. Little changed from when it was introduced in 1960. Count the fact that it requires no Wi-Fi connection. On the 13th of July, 1977, a 25-hour power blackout hit New York City, resulting in widespread rioting and looting. 1,616 stores, 1,037 fires, including 45 multiple alarms were set, and 3,776 arrests were made. The blackout is credited with costing New York City Mayor Ed Bean his re-election bid that November. And finally, on the 14th of July, 1789, Parisian revolutionaries and mutinous French troops stormed and took over the Bastille, the royal fortress and prison in the heart of Paris. The event marked the beginning of the French Revolution that would culminate in monarchy in 1792, and the deaths of King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette via the guillotine in 1793. Birthdays in the coming week. Today, Kevin Bacon, the actor, turns 63. Tom Hanks turns 65 tomorrow, as does O.J. Simpson, turns 74 tomorrow. And in another recently freed felon, Bill Cosby turns 84 on Monday. And who mentioned Indiana Jones? Somebody mentioned Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford turns 70. And that's this week in history.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Now, I would like to call up to the podium Pamela Walters, our immediate past president, for a special presentation.
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everybody. I'll try not to monopolize my time at the podium today, but who is everybody? Are you missing me yet? Just kidding. Bill's going to be a fabulous president. But when he starts learning more about it. But honestly and truly, every year we pick a Rotarian of the Year. But you all have to agree that 2020, 2021 was an absolutely exceptional year. And when they came to me and said, it's time for you to pick the Rotarian of the Year, I thought, oh, this is not going to be easy. So I made a list of people that I felt like had given really outstanding service to the club and exemplified service above self and did it with a willing heart. And I came down to 2 people, and I went to Holly and I said, okay, Holly and Bill and a couple other people, and I said, there's no way I can't possibly make a decision between these 2 people and just pick one of them. And so we came to the conclusion that for this year only, we would have an exception and have dual Rotarians of the Year. And so briefly touched on that at our installation. And because one of our Rotarians of the Year was out of town at that time. So what I want to say about this person is that, honestly and truly, if you don't know this person, there aren't enough words. And if you do know this person, no words are necessary. But I would like to introduce my friend and one of what I consider 2 of the most outstanding people I've ever met in my entire life. But the most interesting man in the world, Austin Luce. Thank you all so much. I'm not so sweet, but what I want to say is Austin, with no fanfare and no bragging or expounding his endeavors to improve this club, has brought in more new members and been more supportive of this club than any president could ever have asked for. His heart is so big, but you don't know that until you get to know him. He seems like this very cool, aloof, debonair, single young man. But when you get to know him, you realize that he is a giver. He exemplifies service above self, never asking for anything for himself. The reason he couldn't make it to our installation and to the initial introduction to Rotary of the Year, Rotarian of the Year, was because Austin not only works full-time, of course, as a commercial realtor, but he has volunteered to serve in the Texas National Guard, State Guard, the Texas State Guard. And was in his first training session that week, that day and that weekend. And so without further ado, I'm going to let Austin say a few words, and then I will present him the plaque that will forever have his and Ashley's names on it. And I have also volunteered to proudly display this plaque and not stick it in the storage room somewhere in my entry foyer at my office, because honestly, I think getting this award is one of the greatest awards you'll ever achieve. And so, Austin, will you say something?
Sure. Very much. I certainly appreciate it. This really meant a lot to me. It's a real highlight of the week to be able to show up and see each of you and have lunch, and there's just a real energy in the group. It's a group of people who just want to make a difference, and they want to make a difference in their communities and in their families and around the world. And so, I think that I got recognized just for inviting people, and I just invited people who like to have a good time. If you're not having fun, don't do it, right? So people who like to have a fun time, and people who like to be involved and make a difference. And so we're gonna keep doing that.
All right.
And I just have to say, it really is an honor to not of course, getting Rotarian of the Year is a real honor, but to be the 1 o'clock John Childs Rotarian of the Year is really icing on the cake.
They're here.
Yeah.
Okay, this very small token of our appreciation is to hang in your office. But this very large, beautiful plaque, with all of the prior Rotarians of the Year, is gonna hang in my office. For 1 year. All right, thank you, and thank you, Austin.
Okay, Austin, thank you. Pam, thank you as well. Moving right along, Rotary business. Our next board meeting will be Friday, July the 16th. We start gathering about 11:30 in the morning to eat lunch, things like that. And 12, the meeting begins. We have our meeting at the La Quinta Inn, hosted graciously by Hemant Patel, who provides us with hot coffee and cold water. And it's at the corner of Robert E. Lee and Broadway. And just so you'll know, if you're not on the board, that doesn't mean you can't come. So come on out and have a good time. If you're not careful, you might have a laugh or two. Who knows? Okay, Susan Campbell is our program for next week about Camp Feed. Yes. Yes. You've been on the schedule for quite some time. No, you'll be all right, don't worry. And now I'm going to ask one of our new members, Mr. Brooks Melton, to come forward. He is going to introduce today's speaker.
All right, well, thank you all for coming here today. We have a very special guest here with us today. Miss Ashley Washmon is a graduate of Baylor University, which I don't think we have any fans of Baylor here. She's a graduate of Baylor, and she married a guy from Tyler. I don't know if any of you know him. You probably voted for him on the school board, Mr. Wade Washmon. They have 2 beautiful children. She's been here for about 14 years, so we consider her a native Tylerite now, and she just recently, right before the pandemic last year, became the new executive director of Historic Tyler. So would you please join me in welcoming Miss Ashley Washmon.
Thanks for having me. I am so excited to, introduce you guys to Historic Tyler and what we do for the community. It's a little intimidating as I look around the room. There's several citizens who probably know more about Tyler than I do, so no pressure, right? So Historic Tyler, we are a local nonprofit founded in 1977. Around the bicentennial, our country started to realize that we needed to protect our historic resources, sites, and structures. And so in 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the National Historic Preservation Act. And as a result, historic preservation organizations started popping up around the country, including Historic Tyler. Okay, what do we do in the community? What role do we play? Well, Historic Tyler has been a voice for preservation since our founding. When historically significant structures are threatened with demolition, neglect, or inappropriate alterations, we intervene. And our mission encompasses education, advocacy, and raising funds for preservation projects. And not to brag or toot our own horn, but we have many notable projects to our credit, and I would love to just hit a couple of those highlights. The top left building, that is the 1880 jail. It is now Randy Gilbert's law office. Historic Tyler actually purchased that building to save it from demolition. And then we in turn sold it to Randy Gilbert. The next building, that's the Mayfair building. Historic Tyler helped create and fund a 501c3 called Friends of the Mayfair. Their purpose is obviously to advocate and raise funds for the preservation of this building. And then Historic Tyler also funded some exterior renovations for this building. It obviously needs some love right now, but it is included in the city's plans for the Harvey Hall complex. And so we are really excited to see, this preservation project come to fruition. We'll keep our finger on the pulse of this project as it moves along. And then the interesting thing about this building is that one time it had a red carpet rolling out the front and a long breezeway that welcomed big name performers to the stage, such as Elvis Presley, Dolly Parton, Johnny Cash, just to name a few. Okay, the next building is the Carnegie Library. It was dates back to 1904. Historic Tyler helped fund restoration projects for this building. Smith County Historical Society now offices out of this building, and we work really closely with Smith County Historical Society. I like to say that we're opposite, sides of the same coin. They document and archive the history of our town, and then Historic Tyler is the hands and feet of the preservation in Tyler. Okay, the next building is the Cotton Belt Building. It dates back to 1905. Historic Tyler helped restore the wood floors to that building, and we funded a few exterior renovations to that building. It is now a train museum, and I have spent many, many Saturdays there with my young son who adores trains. Probably know me by first name. The second white building in the center, that is the Path Building. It was originally the Gaffney Clinic and Hospital and is an excellent example of Art Deco architecture, also called Moderne. It dates back to the 1930s. And then in 2004, 2005, Historic Tyler saved this building. We advocated and saved it from demolition. The yellow brick archway, that is the entry to the Rose Garden. Historic Tyler, along with the Gertrude Windsor Garden Club, helped restore the bricks and clean the bricks. And then shortly thereafter, the Rose Complex was listed in the National Register for Historic Places. And then the bottom left picture, that is the McClendon House. Let me get the dates right. It dates back to the 1880s and was home of Washington news correspondent Sarah McClendon. And at one time, this house was set on fire, and Historic Tyler, along with the McClendon House Society, we painstakingly restored the damage to this home. And then the gates at the bottom, that is the Oakwood Cemetery. It is a very historically significant cemetery here in Tyler. And Historic Tyler funded 3 different guided walking tours. There's a kiosk in the center of the cemetery, and it holds pamphlets, and you can, follow the markers and get the history of the families that are buried there. It's fascinating, actually. And then Historic Tyler also funded or helped fund ground penetrating sonar to help identify unmarked graves that are located at the back of the cemetery. A little side note, there's a group called the Oakwood Restoration Group, and they help maintain this cemetery, and they have a walking tour of reenactments depicting, the history of some of the families that are buried there, and that's called Spirits of Oakwood, and this year that date will be October 23rd if anyone's interested. So at this time last year, we had just canceled, like many nonprofits, our fundraiser for the year. And I distinctly remember sitting in my office wondering what, preservation projects, what historic preservation would hold for us this coming year. And we have been completely overwhelmed our way and how far we've been able to carry our mission despite the crazy times surrounding this year. Our first project is the Goodman LeGrand House and Museum. This house is so important to Tyler, and it dates back to 1859. They are currently having an exterior restoration campaign. There's some updates that we need to exterior to keep the house in good condition, and Historic Tyler was really honored to be able to kick off that campaign for them. That was back in September. So then Christmas rolls around, and we caught wind that the Revere House, it's the bottom house, was scheduled for demolition. A little backstory on this house is about a decade ago, Historic Tyler helped fund the exterior painting of this home, and then shortly thereafter, the home caught fire. and it's set in the elements for a decade. And so whenever we found out that this home was going to be demolished, I immediately contacted Smith County Historical Society and found out they had minimal information. And so we acted quickly to get Mark Thackeray, who's a local commercial and preservation architect, to come out, and he compiled a detailed report and history of this home. And I'm going to invite Mark up at the end of my little spiel so he can give you just the details about that project. It was such a worthy and invaluable project for our community. And then all the while, all these projects are going on, we have been compiling photographs and history. We're doing a coffee table book titled The Art of Preservation with Historic Tyler. I have spent about a year vetting this project, and there has been nothing like it to date. And we're going to document and show these historic homes, the cross-section of historic homes of Tyler. And our hope is that it not only benefits historic Tyler, but the community as well. And so if you're interested in more information on that project, I could probably give a whole speech on that. Come see me or contact me afterwards. We're actually still looking for a few sponsors to complete the funding for this project. And last but not least, oh my goodness, this year we are working on a new national district named the Pollard Farm Survey. We are currently finishing and hope to present it to the Texas Historical Commission in January 2022. This survey will contain 248 properties that are mostly ranch style and mid-century modern architecture. The survey is named for Edna and Thomas G. Pollard Sr. Their home was located on Old Truth Highway, and a good portion of the land that this district will encompass was actually their farmland. So when I started at Historic Tyler, I was impressed and shocked to find out that Historic Tyler was responsible for the designation of all of Tyler's 6 historic districts. And so I just cannot imagine our town without these historic districts. And so I'm going to briefly introduce you to the 6 districts. The first district was actually the second to be nominated, or designated actually. It's the Azalea National District. It received its designation in June of 2000. It's our largest district, with, consisting of 950 properties, predominantly built during the oil boom. Number 2 is the Charnwood District. This was our first district to be nominated in 1999. And the district encompasses 12 blocks with about 125 contributing properties. Number 3 is the Brick Street District. It was designated in January of 2004. It encompasses 29 blocks of commercial and residential buildings. That last photo is actually a photo of the Brick Street being laid. And years ago, Historic Tyler collaborated with Smith County Historical Society, and we produced just a short documentary and video showing the Brick Streets being laid, and it's really interesting. Smith County Historical Society has that DVD for sale, I believe. I think it's also linked to our Facebook page. Okay, number 4, I have a heart for this district, I love it. It's the Donnybrook Duplex Residential National District in 2002. These duplexes are a rare example of duplex development built immediately post-World War II. It consists of 18 duplexes dating back to 1947 to 1948. Building materials were hard to come by after the war, and so they built duplexes to house war soldiers that were coming home. Next is the East Ferguson Residential National District, also designated in 2002. It consists of 6 modest, nearly identical houses built for working class family, and they are craftsman bungalow styles. They were rent-to-own homes, and they date back to 1926 to 1930. And this district is located 3 blocks east of Tyler's Courthouse, right past the railroad tracks. And then number 6 is the Shoreline District. It was also designated in 2002. That was a busy year for us. And it's located approximately 5 blocks northwest of Tyler's Courthouse Square. And it consists of 11 nearly identical rental properties built for African American families in 1930 to 1935. Another fun part of my job that I really enjoy is I get to assist homeowners in getting their homes designated with historic designations. So there's 3 primary designations that you can get. There's the Tyler Historic Landmark, and that is given through the city's Historic Preservation Board. There is an application link on the city's website and also on our website. And then next is the Texas Historic Landmark, and that is through the Texas Historical Commission. That one is very difficult to meet all requirements to receive that designation. And then there is the National Register of Historic Places, and that's also given through the Texas Historical Commission. So we are able to fund all of our projects in 2 primary ways. One is our biggest fundraiser, and that's Historic Tyler on Tour. We've held the tour since 1981, and over the years we've featured 209 homes, varying in architectural styles from mid-century modern all the way to the Victorian. Let's see. And this is your one chance to kind of get a glimpse of the interior Tyler treasures. Our weekend kicks off tour and garden party on Friday evening. This was this year's Candlelight Party home instead of Church Clark Daniel's home. And the remainder of the weekend, you have access to the 5 daytime tour homes. Just a shameless nonprofit plug. We're always docents for our tour. Groups can volunteer as a group, we can volunteer individually. And it's an interesting, very unique way to a historic perspective on these homes. I'm already working on our 2022 tour. The dates will be April 1st through the 3rd. It takes about a year to put this tour together. The second way we fund membership. Right now we have about 375 members. And not only do our membership dues help fund our projects, but it also strengthens our voice for preservation. The more members we have, the more we can advocate for the saving of buildings in town. All of these photos on the bottom are houses or buildings, that we have lost due to demolition. I have on my table, if you're interested, a pamphlet on the Oakwood Cemetery and then a pamphlet about Historic Tyler. And there's my contact information. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to see me after the meeting or contact me. By the time, I would love to introduce to you guys Mark A. Thacker, AIA. Mark is located in Tyler, Texas, and is a full-service architecture firm providing professional architecture and historic preservation services with an emphasis on preservation planning, restoration, and rehabilitation of historic buildings and structures. Mr. Thacker has worked with Historic Tyler on several projects over the years and provides invaluable experience and knowledge in the field of preservation.
Can someone tell me how much time I have? 8 minutes. 8 minutes? Well, I'll call this the 45-8 presentation. 45 slides in 8 minutes. So I'll move pretty fast. This subject property is the Riviera House. It's over in North Tyler. The purpose of my project that I was involved in for Historic Tyler Inc. The purpose was to document the existing conditions of the house, create some floor plans, record the building with photographs, and create a permanent record of the house prior to its impending demolition. Just a little bit of the background, which family research was not a part of my project, so I was looking for something that related to the physical building itself. It was supposed to have been built about 1890. A key date was 1947. The Queen's tea was held on this house's grounds. During the 1980s, an attorney bought, late 70s, an attorney bought the property and restored the. In between some of these key neglect and vandalism occurred. One of the things I look at is the old Sanborn maps. This is from 1938, and this gives me some idea of the footprint in 1938. This is a house in 1979, and it's pretty well restored to its former glory. And then by 2004, you can see it deteriorated. The gutters are sagging, windows are plywooded up. And then in 2010, it suffered a fire. And you can see the loss on the roof, and the second floor was pretty well burned out. This is the rear of the house. You can see a partial collapse has occurred. This is the interior. I'll show you a few slides of it. This appears to be a very beautiful interior. However, it's not historic. This was part of the last renovation that was going on when the fire occurred. And so one of my tasks is to go through and determine what is original and what is not. This is one of the really pretty rooms that has a half circle wall. You can see where the floor is collapsed on the second floor. The fireplace, this was kind of a treasure trove to me. I could see original brick, I could see 1920s brick, and then the last facade that was put on the fireplace is under that debris. This is one of the hallways with a partial collapse. Beautiful three-window series. Here's one of the fireplace. This house is from the Victorian era, and it's Queen Anne style. This fireplace originally would be very ornate. And then here are some of the floor plan, the original floor plan, and then the floor plan prior. You can see the upper photographs are original handmade brick. The ones down here in the lower corner are probably about 1970s recycled brick. Another thing I look at is clapboard planking. You can see cut nails in here, which pushes that date back to the 1890s. Here are some of the remodel items. You can see the clapboard has a different profile. They've installed it over a sheathing, and it has round nails instead of the cut nails. Here is an example of the original plaster lab. That's the horizontal boards. It had sheetrock or gypsum board attached to that. In the 1920s, they had removed all the plaster from the house's interior. This here looks like a big mess, but to a preservation architect, it's an open book. You can see all kinds of different eras of material here. Just another thing that we look for in these old houses is red flags. Here you have 3 red flags on an upper story porch. The windows do not line up. That's a red flag. You can see up on the fascia board, there's a joint, and the fascia boards are totally different. And then you have this little shed roof on the front, represented by the black era. Does not really fit the Queen Anne style. Here's that porch. It's been kind of extended out. Wagon wheel element, and it was determined that that little wagon wheel element is actually original. However, it's not in its original position. Here's the north elevation prior to the demolition. Here's some of the detailing. Some of these components are original, some are not. Here's one of the porch railings. You can see the pickets or balusters. There was 3 different generations of those. We were able to take a look at those real close when the building was brought down. Here's the south projection. It had a beautiful half circle wall with 3 windows with fishtail shingles. Here's where one of the details, you can see a modern board was added to the original. We have identified original paint residue, which was a bright white, and then a mid-1900s color, probably that 20s renovation, and it was an off-white. Another thing we look at is, for example, this chimney. You have the 1890 soft brick down below. Originally, they were exposed to the elements above the roof plane, deteriorated, and then the 1920s brick were rebuilt in that top part. Here's the stairwell. Prior to demolition, it was an L shape. Originally, it was a U shape. Again, that's that red flag. You would never have a queen in house that, and here's verification that where the original components of the stair are compared to later components. Ceilings is another treasure trove that we find sometimes. The sheetrock had gotten wet, fell off of this, exposing 2 generations of wallpaper over a cheesecloth backing. The whitish paint that you see there was probably put on about 1910. And then originally the ceiling was a natural finish, and you can kind of see that in the upper right corner. Another thing that we found interesting is a butler stair. Red arrow is an upper landing, blue arrow is a lower landing. And here's a detail of that lower landing. This was more of a service stair. In summary, what we found out, the results, the original construction date was about 1890. The first renovation was about 1920. The second renovation was about 1946. And lo and behold, that corresponds to that rose T. The house later fell into disrepair, third renovation, go all the way down to the demolition in 2021. Here's a photo of the porch being demolished. You can see the porch turret on its side, this side area. We had a couple of protesters at the top of the chimney, but that didn't stop them.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Very nice. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation, Ashley. And I want to go ahead and present to you this certificate. We donated, made a contribution to the Literacy Council of Tyler in your honor. And we thank you for coming out for an excellent presentation. And now it's time for the Ace of Diamonds. JB, how much do we have in there this week? $336. Well, at least you didn't say not much like you did last week. Now, half the drawing here is for the club. Actually, we're going to let you draw, okay? Half the drawings for the club, benefits the Tyler Rotary Club, and half goes to the Rotarian winner. If a Rotary guest receives this, then they get 25%, and their Rotarian host gets 25%. And actually, could you please read the last 3 digits?
478.
478. Who has that? Nobody has it?
Somebody's got it.
Nobody's got it.
Somebody's got it.
Usually it's too late to look.
$485.
485. Come on up here, Katie.
All right. Now she's got to go pull the card.
Card's back there.
She's got to go that way. Yeah, you messed her up.
What does she have? What does she have? Okay, tear that in half for us, Katie. There we go. Better luck next week. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and all stand up, and we're going to do the 4-way test. The things that we as Rotarians think, say, or do. First,
Is it true?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it go to the will and better friendship?
fourth,
Will be beneficial to all concerned?
and we're adjourned.
Come again. I will.